The vast, dark expanse of space stretches out beyond the Galactic Empire's war room, where its leaders gather for a critical meeting. Commander Zoreth, a towering figure of military power, stands at the head of the table, his cold gaze fixed on the holographic display in front of him. His fingers tap against the table impatiently as the screen flickers to life, showing images of a mysterious object orbiting Earth. The image is grainy, distorted, and cloaked in secrecy, but there's no mistaking it. Something is out there, just beyond the Earth's atmosphere. The leaders of the Empire shift uncomfortably, their voices low but filled with unease. For centuries, Earth had been nothing more than a backwater planet, insignificant, primitive, a world unable to threaten the might of the Galactic Empire. But now, something has changed. The object on the display was a sudden anomaly, and the Empire had taken notice. The intelligence reports suggest that the Earth's technology had made a leap, one that had never been seen before. The leaders debate among themselves, questioning what it could mean. Some dismiss it, claiming that Earth's inhabitants are still stuck in their ways, too primitive to pose any real danger. Others, more cautious, suggest the possibility of an ambush, or worse, a failed human experiment gone wrong. But Commander Zoreth, with his icy demeanor and years of tactical expertise, sees it differently. His voice cuts through the growing tension, the final word on the matter. This is no mistake. Whatever this is, we cannot afford to ignore it. Earth may have been insignificant, but this could be the key to something far greater. We will eliminate the threat before it becomes a problem. His orders are clear: a full-scale strike against Earth to destroy the unknown object and neutralize any possible threat. The Empire's fleet is massive, prepared for anything. Their ships are unmatched in power, their weapons capable of decimating entire planets. With a simple gesture, Zoreth seals the fate of Earth. The Empire's warships are sent into motion, their engines roaring to life, leaving the Imperial command with a sense of impending doom hanging in the air. As the fleet speeds toward Earth, the first wave of ships begins its journey across the galaxy, prepared to wipe out this perceived threat in a matter of minutes. But they have no idea what they're about to face. Back on Earth, a shadow stirs in the vastness of space. Just beyond the moon's orbit, the massive Eclipse supercarrier lies cloaked, hidden from any prying eyes. Its sleek, dark silhouette blends seamlessly with the inky blackness, as if it were a part of the void itself. Its enormous frame is covered in advanced shielding, reflecting no light, making it virtually undetectable to the enemy. Inside, the crew works tirelessly, unaware of the impending destruction being aimed at their planet. The supercarrier's powerful AI, Athena, hums quietly in the background, calculating the exact moment to reveal its presence. In the command center, Captain Nathan Cole stands before the central console, his sharp eyes scanning the data feed as his fingers tap rhythmically on the interface. He knows that something big is coming, and his instincts tell him that today will be unlike any other. The Eclipse had been kept hidden for years, its capabilities unknown to the galaxy. It was Earth's greatest weapon, and Captain Cole was the one entrusted with its safety. Athena. He speaks quietly, but his voice carries authority. Prepare for deployment. Get me an update on the fleet's position. The AI responds in a calm, soothing tone. Fleet is currently en route, Captain. Estimated arrival in T-minus 15 minutes. All systems are primed for engagement. Captain Cole takes a deep breath, steadying his nerves. This is it, the moment he's been waiting for. He's confident, but his heart races. He can feel the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders, knowing that the fate of Earth rests on the next few moments. Outside the supercarrier, the fleet of the Galactic Empire moves forward, not realizing that their arrogance has blinded them to what awaits. The first wave of ships, sleek and deadly, emerges from hyperspace, their weapons fully charged, ready to tear through any resistance. They're prepared for Earth's destruction. What they don't know is that the Eclipse is already waiting, and it is far more powerful than anything they could have imagined. Athena's voice fills the command center, her calm presence cutting through the tension. "Captain, the fleet has entered range. Cloak disengaging in 3, 2, 1. With a hum that reverberates through the ship's core, the Eclipse reveals itself. The cloak dissipates, and the massive supercarrier emerges from the shadows, its weapons charging, ready to defend the Earth at all costs. The Empire's fleet is taken completely by surprise. In a moment of sheer panic, the first wave of enemy ships begins to break formation, disarray spreading as they struggle to respond. Their weapons fire at the Eclipse, but they are too slow. The supercarrier's advanced shielding absorbs the impact, and the energy is redirected, causing an explosion that obliterates one of the enemy warships in a blinding flash. The fleet is caught off guard, completely unprepared for the powerful force they're facing. The Empire's leaders watch in horror as their carefully planned attack turns into chaos. Their ships begin to fall, one by one, under the relentless assault of the Eclipse's weaponry. Drones launch. AI-controlled combat units swarm the enemy vessels, disabling their systems and leaving them defenseless. The Empire's ships, designed for sheer destruction, are now nothing more than sitting ducks. At the helm of the Eclipse, Captain Cole watches the destruction unfold, his eyes narrowed in focus. "Give them everything we've got," he commands, his voice unwavering. The crew follows his orders without hesitation. The Eclipse roars to life, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that tear through the Empire's fleet. The enemy ships attempt to retreat, but it's too late. The humans have taken control of the battle. But just as the tide seems to turn in Earth's favor, a chilling realization hits Commander Zoreth. Watching from his flagship, he witnesses the fall of his fleet, and something inside him snaps. He quickly assesses the situation and recognizes the grave mistake he's made. Earth is not the weak, primitive planet he assumed it to be. The technology they have at their disposal is unlike anything the Empire has encountered. "Retreat." Zoreth roars, his voice laced with panic. "All ships, retreat immediately. This is not a fight we can win." His orders come too late. The damage has been done, and the Empire's forces are in full retreat, their once dominant fleet scattered in chaos. For the first time in history, the Galactic Empire has underestimated its enemy, and it has cost them dearly. Captain Cole stands at the command center, a flicker of triumph in his eyes, but he knows this is just the beginning. Earth has survived its first encounter with the Galactic Empire, but the real battle is only just beginning. As the Empire retreats, a sense of calm settles over the Eclipse. The crew, though victorious, knows that they must prepare for what comes next. The true war for Earth's survival has only just begun, and the stakes are higher than ever. The Eclipse and its crew are ready to face whatever comes their way. Earth's fate now rests in their hands. Captain Nathan Cole stood at the command center of the Eclipse, his sharp eyes scanning the battle unfolding on the monitors. Tall and rugged, his presence was commanding, but it wasn't his size or strength that earned him respect. It was his ability to stay calm under pressure. The weight of leadership was heavy on his shoulders, but he never let it show. The crew, though nervous after the surprise assault from the Galactic Empire, trusted him implicitly. His decisions were precise, and his actions spoke louder than words. "Captain, the Empire's second wave is coming in fast," Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. Cole gave a single nod, acknowledging the report. His hands moved across the control panel with practiced ease, issuing orders to his crew. The Eclipse had been a symbol of humanity's technological leap, and he had been chosen to lead this mission into the unknown. The ship, built with the most advanced technology Earth had ever seen, was their only hope against the Empire. Its features were unlike anything in the galaxy, and it was now up to Cole and his crew to unleash its full power. The Eclipse was not just a ship, it was a marvel of human engineering. Its cloaking device made it virtually invisible, allowing it to slip past enemy defenses without being detected. The ship's sleek, dark frame could easily blend into the void of space, but when it engaged its weapons, it became a force of destruction. The ship's advanced laser beams were capable of slicing through even the toughest of enemy shields, and its drones, small, nimble, and packed with powerful weapons, could disable enemy systems with ease. As the second wave of Empire ships approached, Captain Cole's voice rang out with clarity. Activate cloaking. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Without hesitation, the Eclipse disappeared into the shadows of space, the entire ship becoming invisible to the enemy sensors. The Empire's fleet, flying blind, failed to detect the human ship's position, giving the crew of the Eclipse the upper hand. Cole's face remained stoic, but inside, his pulse quickened. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The first wave of enemy ships, still disoriented from their earlier defeat, tried to regroup, but the humans had an advantage. The Eclipse wasn't just technologically superior. It was designed with a deep understanding of Earth's terrain, and that gave the humans a strategic edge. Captain Cole knew that the Empire's fleet had no knowledge of Earth's hidden defense systems or its most effective battle tactics. Target their command ship. Fire at will, Cole ordered. The Eclipse's weapons systems powered up, and a barrage of laser beams erupted from its guns. The enemy ships, caught off guard, were unable to react quickly enough. The Empire's command ship, one of the largest in their fleet, took the brunt of the attack. Its shields flickered and then failed under the intense barrage. It was the first sign that Earth's superior technology was turning the tide of battle. The Empire's ships, once invincible in their might, were now at the mercy of humanity's technological advancements. Captain Cole watched the destruction unfold on the monitor. The first wave of enemy ships was in full retreat, their systems failing as drones from the Eclipse swarmed their vessels, disabling weapons and communications. The humans had struck the first real blow in the war, and for a brief moment, it seemed as if victory was within reach. But Cole knew better than to assume the battle was over. The Galactic Empire was not a foe that would back down easily. As the Eclipse remained cloaked, navigating through the wreckage of the Empire's fleet, a sudden surge of energy rippled through space. A new ship, far larger and more advanced than anything the humans had faced so far, emerged from the depths of space. Its silhouette was massive, dwarfing the Empire's previous vessels. This was not just another wave of ships. This was something else entirely, a force unlike anything the Eclipse had ever encountered. The new ship's weapons powered up with a hum that shook the fabric of space itself. Its armor was thick and nearly indestructible, designed to withstand the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. The crew of the Eclipse could only watch as the ship's enormous cannon swung into position, aimed directly at them. Captain Cole's heart raced, but his expression remained unchanged. He knew that this battle was far from over. The Empire had sent reinforcements, and this new enemy-class ship would not be easily defeated. The stakes had just escalated. He turned to his crew, his voice steady and commanding. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Engage cloaking and power up all weapons. We're not backing down now. The Eclipse activated its cloaking device again, slipping into the shadows of space. But the new enemy ship's sensors were more advanced, and it had already locked onto the Eclipse's signature. The battle was about to intensify in ways the humans had never expected. As the two ships squared off in the vast emptiness of space, the energy in the command center was palpable. The Eclipse's crew, once uncertain, now worked with a sense of purpose, their trust in Captain Cole unwavering. They had just proven they could stand up to the Empire's first wave. But now, with this new threat looming over them, they were about to face the fight of their lives. Would the Eclipse and its human crew be enough to overcome the Empire's newest weapon, or would they fall before the might of this new enemy? The battle for Earth's survival was far from over. The Eclipse's power had been unleashed, but the true test had only just begun. The Empire was not going to give up easily, and Captain Cole knew that the hardest part of the war was still ahead of them. As the new enemy ship loomed closer, the fate of humanity rested on their ability to outsmart and outfight the Empire, no matter the odds. The tension was thick, the stakes higher than ever. Captain Cole and his crew were ready to face whatever the Empire threw their way. They had survived the first wave. Now they had to prove that Earth could win this war. The battle raged on as the Eclipse danced through the void, its cloaking device flickering in and out of use as the enemy's superior technology locked onto their ship's signature. Captain Nathan Cole stood at the command center, his face grim as he watched the massive enemy ship fire, its weapons streaking across space like fiery comets. The Empire's retaliation was swift and brutal. The Empire's fleet, now reinforced with a new weapon, was a sight to behold. Massive, powerful, and relentless. They were more advanced than anything Earth had ever encountered, and the Eclipse was beginning to feel the weight of their might. A violent shudder passed through the ship as the Eclipse took a direct hit. The lights flickered momentarily, casting long shadows across the crew's faces. The shields, which had withstood so many attacks, groaned under the pressure. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the sound of alarms echoed through the ship. The shields held for a moment, but they were weakening. Each blast from the Empire's weapons made the ship shudder violently, pushing the Eclipse's defenses to their limits. Cole's grip on the command chair tightened as he quickly assessed the damage. The crew's once confident expressions now reflected fear as the ship began to lose altitude. The stakes had just gotten much higher. "Shields at 30%, reported Lieutenant Harper, her voice filled with worry. "We can't take much more of this." Cole nodded, his mind racing as the pressure mounted. The Eclipse had never faced an enemy of this scale, and now they were being pushed to the edge. He could feel the weight of the decision he had to make. They had to keep fighting, but there was a risk of total destruction. There was no turning back now. He needed to make decisions that would save the ship and its crew, but at what cost? "Redirect all power to the shields," Cole ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to hold them off for as long as we can. Evade any incoming blasts and prepare for the next round." The Eclipse swerved and dove, its engines roaring as it tried to outmaneuver the Empire's fire. But it wasn't enough. A massive blast from the enemy struck the hull, sending the ship into a violent spin. The crew struggled to maintain control as alarms blared, signaling the catastrophic damage to the port side. A deep rumbling echoed through the ship, and Captain Cole's heart skipped a beat as he saw the damage unfold on the screen. The Eclipse was being torn apart. The ship's AI, Athena, struggled to compensate for the damage, but it was clear. The ship couldn't survive much longer under this assault. Then came the moment that no one was prepared for. Lieutenant Sarah, Cole's closest friend and trusted confidant, was at her station near the Central Defense Systems. She had been with him through every mission, and they had shared countless battles together. Sarah's quick thinking and calm under pressure had saved their lives more times than he could count. But now, in the face of overwhelming odds, Sarah was about to make the ultimate sacrifice. A massive blast from the enemy ship surged toward them, a direct hit that could breach the Eclipse's already weakened defenses. The crew scrambled, but there was no time to react. The blast was unavoidable. In a moment of sheer desperation, Sarah saw the danger. Without a second thought, she moved to intercept the blast, initiating a system override that would divert the energy surge toward an auxiliary power core, sacrificing herself in the process. "No," Cole shouted, his voice filled with horror, but it was too late. The explosion hit and Sarah's figure disappeared from the view of the command center. The shockwave rocked the ship, and Cole's heart sank as he realized what had just happened. The Eclipse's defenses held for a moment longer, but the cost was catastrophic. The ship's internal systems flickered, and the hum of the engines began to die down. The crew was silent, each person processing the loss of someone they had relied on. Sarah's sacrifice was the kind of act that would stay with them forever. "Sarah," No, Cole whispered, his voice breaking. He had known the risks of war, but nothing could prepare him for losing someone so close. She had been like a sister to him, and now she was gone. The loss hit everyone hard, but there was no time to mourn. The Empire was still pressing on, and Earth's very survival depended on the Eclipse's ability to continue the fight. Captain Cole wiped his eyes, feeling the weight of Sarah's death press down on him. But he couldn't afford to let his emotions cloud his judgment. His crew was counting on him, and Sarah's death could not be in vain. "Rally the crew," Cole shouted, his voice now filled with renewed resolve. "We will finish this for Sarah." The crew, devastated by the loss, rallied behind their captain. They had no choice but to push forward. The enemy was closing in fast, and Earth's atmosphere was just ahead. The Empire's fleet was about to break through, and the planet would be within their reach. But Cole wasn't about to let that happen. He steeled himself, his grief pushed aside for the moment as he focused on the task at hand. The Eclipse had already taken damage, and Sarah's sacrifice had bought them precious time. Now they had to make it count. He would fight until his last breath to make sure that the Empire did not claim victory. "We're not giving up," Cole said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "We hold the line here. We fight for Earth, for everyone we've lost, and for Sarah." The crew, inspired by his words, scrambled to prepare the final stand. They were determined to push the Empire back and protect their world. The loss of Lieutenant Sarah would fuel their resolve. The stakes had never been higher, and they were ready to face whatever came next. The Eclipse had been wounded, but it wasn't finished yet, and neither was Captain Nathan Cole. The battle for Earth was far from over, but with Sarah's memory guiding them, they would fight with everything they had left. This was no longer just about a ship or a battle. It was about survival, and they would not let the Empire destroy everything they held dear. The final stand had begun. The battle raged on as the Eclipse and its crew fought desperately to hold off the Empire's relentless assault. But the enemy had one last card to play, a weapon so powerful it threatened to end the war in a single stroke. The Empire's flagship, a massive, intimidating vessel, emerged from the chaos. It was unlike anything Earth had ever seen, a behemoth of war that seemed to devour the very stars around it. Its weapons glowed ominously as the ship powered up, preparing to launch its final strike. "Brace yourselves," Captain Cole ordered, his voice steady but filled with urgency. He knew this was the Empire's last move, and if they didn't stop it, Earth would be obliterated. The flagship was equipped with a world-destroying ray, a weapon capable of decimating entire planets. It was the Empire's ultimate weapon, and now it was aimed directly at Earth. The crew of the Eclipse watched in horror as the massive flagship powered up, its ray charging, preparing to unleash destruction on the planet below. Earth's fate hung in the balance, and the Eclipse was the last line of defense. "We need to stop that thing now," shouted Lieutenant Harper, her face etched with fear. She had seen what the Empire could do, and this was unlike anything they had faced before. Captain Cole gripped the armrests of his command chair, his jaw clenched in determination. He knew that if the flagship's ray was allowed to fire, there would be nothing left of Earth. The Eclipse had already taken a beating, but they had to give everything they had to stop this final blow. "Prepare for the final assault," Cole commanded. "All remaining power to the engines. We need to get in close." The Eclipse surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it hurtled toward the massive flagship. The ship's cloaking device flickered briefly, and for a moment, the Empire's fleet was confused, unable to track their movements. But this would be their last chance. The Eclipse wasn't going to make it out of this fight unscathed. "Firing weapons," shouted Commander Clark from the weapons station. The Eclipse's advanced laser beams shot forward, hitting the flagship's shields, but the blasts barely made a dent. The flagship's defenses were too powerful. The flagship retaliated, launching a barrage of missiles and energy blasts in return, hitting the Eclipse with devastating force. The ship rocked violently, and alarms blared as the crew fought to maintain control. Captain Cole's mind raced. This wasn't enough. The Eclipse couldn't win with just firepower. They had to board the flagship, disable its weapons, and destroy the energy core. It was a suicide mission, but there was no other choice. "Prepare for boarding," Cole ordered. "We're going in." The crew scrambled to get ready. They had no time to waste. The Eclipse was running on fumes, and the flagship's massive weapons were only a heartbeat away from obliterating Earth. The boarding team, led by Cole himself, sprinted toward the airlock. They were suited up, ready to fight through the enemy flagship's defenses. The Eclipse locked onto the flagship with its magnetic clamps, holding tight as the crew prepared to storm the enemy vessel. The airlock doors opened with a hiss, and Cole and his team were launched into the belly of the beast. They fought their way through the flagship's halls, each step harder than the last. Enemy soldiers, heavily armored and armed with advanced weaponry, filled the corridors. The battle was brutal and intense. The crew fought through waves of enemies, their weapons flashing in the dark corridors, the sound of gunfire and clashing blades echoing in the metal halls. Captain Cole was at the front, leading the charge. He was relentless, his determination driving him forward. Each step brought them closer to the flagship's core. They knew that if they didn't reach it in time, the ray would be fired, and Earth would be gone. The fighting was fierce. Lieutenant Harper, Sergeant Walker, and the rest of the team cut down enemy soldiers as they moved through the corridors. Every inch was contested, but they pushed forward, determined to end the war once and for all. The closer they got to the core, the more intense the fighting became. Enemy soldiers seemed to be everywhere, and the team's energy was beginning to wane. But Cole refused to slow down. He was driven by the memory of those they had lost, by the faces of every man and woman on Earth who depended on them. He couldn't let the Empire win. Not like this. They finally reached the core of the flagship, a massive chamber filled with glowing, pulsating energy. The heart of the flagship's power was a complex system of AI-controlled weapons and energy cores, all designed to give the Empire a near-invincible advantage. The team fought off a final wave of enemy soldiers, then focused on the core. "We have to disable it," Cole shouted over the din of the battle. Sergeant Walker moved quickly, hacking into the core's systems with a portable terminal. But as they worked, a chilling realization hit. The AI-controlled weapons that powered the flagship were far more dangerous than they had anticipated. The core was far more complex, and disabling it would require more time than they had. They were running out of options. "We can't hold out much longer," Harper shouted, her voice filled with desperation. Cole's heart raced as he looked at the terminal. It was now or never. He could see the countdown to the flagship's world-destroying ray. The seconds were ticking away, and every moment they delayed brought Earth closer to annihilation. But the core was almost there. In a final, risky move, Cole made a decision. He would override the system manually, bypassing the security protocols and venting the core's energy. It was dangerous, but it was their only shot. With a swift motion, Cole punched in the override codes. The core crackled, and the energy inside the flagship began to destabilize. The AI-controlled weapons fired off in wild, erratic bursts as the flagship's systems began to collapse. The Eclipse rocked as the flagship's core started to overload. "We're out of time," Cole yelled, signaling the crew to retreat. They turned and sprinted toward the airlock as the flagship's core exploded in a blinding flash of light. The shockwave sent them tumbling through the halls, but they made it back to the Eclipse just in time. The flagship, once the pride of the Empire, was now a wreck. Its massive energy core had been destroyed, taking down the entire ship with it. The Eclipse had succeeded in its final desperate assault. Earth was safe for now. Captain Cole and his crew stood on the deck of the Eclipse, breathless and covered in the marks of battle. They had fought through hell, but they had won. The Empire had been defeated, and Earth was safe. The crew looked at each other, their faces a mix of exhaustion, relief, and triumph. The war was over. The battle raged on. The Empire's massive fleet, after receiving orders from its leaders to continue their relentless assault, seemed to grow stronger by the minute. But then, a twist of fate turned the tide. It started as a faint signal, a faint hope that only the most skilled technicians aboard the Eclipse could detect. It was a transmission from Earth's backup forces. The Empire had expected Earth's last stand to be in vain. They assumed that Earth's resistance forces, those underdog rebels, fighting with scraps and limited resources, would be wiped out by the full force of the Empire's technological superiority. But the humans had one thing the Empire didn't account for: sheer determination. The backup forces weren't massive war fleets. They weren't advanced, highly trained soldiers in state-of-the-art ships. Instead, they were made up of smaller, scrappy human vessels, old military ships, hastily constructed crafts, and civilian ships that had been modified for combat. These human fighters came from various resistance factions scattered across Earth and its colonies. They had fought tooth and nail to stay alive, and now they were fighting for the survival of their world. Captain Cole watched as the radar screens flickered to life, showing the movement of Earth's backup forces. His eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a grin. "They're here," he muttered, the words filled with awe. "They've come for us." With Earth's resistance forces now in the fight, the Eclipse found new strength. Their arrival wasn't a miracle. It was a game changer. The battle between Earth's scrappy underdogs and the Empire's overwhelming power had begun in earnest. "Let's show them what we're made of," Captain Cole said, rallying his crew. His voice was low but carried the weight of authority. His crew, already on edge from the previous battles, now found renewed vigor. They had witnessed countless horrors, lost friends and comrades, but now, with their backup forces joining the fray, they felt a spark of hope ignite deep within them. The human resistance ships, though outnumbered and outgunned, fought with an unmatched intensity. The sheer determination of Earth's people was now evident in every move they made. The Empire's massive, towering warships, bristling with weaponry, seemed unwieldy and slow in comparison to the nimble human ships that zipped and darted around them, launching precision strikes. The small ships dodged and weaved, taking advantage of every advantage, no matter how small. It wasn't the most refined battle plan, but it was effective. The resistance ships used everything in their arsenal, including unconventional tactics, to destroy the Empire's reinforcements. Human ingenuity, the ability to think on the fly, had always been humanity's greatest strength, and it was showing now. They had nothing to lose, so they used every weapon and every piece of technology at their disposal. Captain Cole's leadership was more crucial than ever. He didn't give orders from behind the lines. He was on the front lines with his crew, leading by example. His cool demeanor was a beacon for his men and women, especially as the battle's intensity reached a fever pitch. The sky above Earth, once clear, now rained down with laser fire and missile strikes as the battle between the Empire and the humans escalated. With each passing second, more and more human ships joined the fray. The Eclipse unleashed a devastating orbital bombardment, launching everything it had left at the Empire's remaining warships. A massive salvo of missiles rained down from space, targeting key Empire vessels with precision. The Empire's warships, already battered and weakened from the earlier skirmishes, couldn't withstand the barrage. One by one, the enemy ships exploded in blinding flashes of light, their massive structures collapsing into fiery ruins. It was a heart-pounding spectacle, the kind of battle that would be remembered in history for centuries. The air was thick with tension as the Eclipse continued to fire, dodging enemy fire, all while coordinating with the newly arrived forces. Cole's mind worked quickly, calculating every move, every shot, every angle. Every decision he made could mean life or death for Earth's forces. But even with the tide slowly turning in their favor, the emotional intensity of the battle didn't lessen. There was a lot at stake, not just the survival of Earth, but the memory of all those they had lost. Each explosion, each fallen ship, was a reminder of the sacrifices made. Captain Cole felt the weight of the world on his shoulders as he continued to lead his crew, pushing them beyond their limits. "Keep fighting," Cole yelled, his voice barely audible above the chaos. "This is for our future. This is for the memory of everyone who believed in us." His words cut through the noise, reaching his crew and the resistance fighters alike. The emotional bond they had forged throughout this war had brought them this far. The loss of Lieutenant Sarah, the devastation of seeing friends and comrades fall, had created an unbreakable connection between them all. But now, with Earth's survival on the line, that bond was stronger than ever. Captain Cole's voice was more than just a command. It was a rallying cry. They had lost so much, but they still had each other, and they still had the will to fight. The battle raged on, and it seemed as though the very fabric of space itself was torn apart by the violence. The human resistance forces fought with a newfound ferocity, bolstered by the knowledge that the Empire's forces were weakening. The Empire had never seen this kind of resistance before. Humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their homes, their families, and their future. Every strike, every shot fired by the resistance, was a reminder that they would not go down quietly. It wasn't just about fighting the enemy. It was about standing up for everything they held dear. The desperation that had once weighed down on them had now turned into something more powerful: hope. And that hope spread like wildfire across the battlefield. As the Empire's warships were torn apart, the morale of their soldiers began to waver. The underdogs, those who had once been dismissed as insignificant, were now standing toe-to-toe with the might of the Empire, and they were winning. It was a battle like no other. The enemy didn't know how to react. The tide was turning, and the humans, with their resilience, their unity, and their unwavering belief in their cause, were proving that they were anything but weak. They had fought back, and now they were on the brink of victory. As Captain Cole stood at the helm, watching the battlefield unfold, he couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. He knew the fight wasn't over yet. There was still much to be done. But for the first time in a long while, Earth had a fighting chance, and they weren't going to let that chance slip away. The final confrontation loomed large as the eclipse and the remaining human forces geared up for one last, desperate push. The Empire's flagship, massive and imposing, towered over the battlefield, its advanced eye-controlled weapons ready to obliterate everything in their path. Captain Cole stood at the helm of the Eclipse, his crew tense but resolute, ready for the battle that would decide the fate of Earth. With the Empire's flagship bearing down on them, every moment felt like a lifetime. The massive warship's weapons fired relentlessly, cutting through the darkness of space with deadly precision. The Eclipse, still a marvel of human engineering, was the last line of defense. Captain Cole knew that this was their moment. If they failed now, Earth would be lost forever. The stakes couldn't be higher. But the crew of the Eclipse wasn't just fighting for their survival. They were fighting for their future, for the memory of those they had lost, and for the generations that would come after them. The loss of Lieutenant Sarah, the countless friends and comrades who had died to get them this far, weighed heavily on Cole. But it also gave him strength. He could hear their voices in his head, urging him on, pushing him to keep fighting. "Lock on to the flagship's energy core," Captain Cole ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. His crew worked with precision, a well-oiled machine. The Eclipse powered up its cloaking systems, slipping past the Empire's fleet, invisible to their sensors. With the flagship's defenses focused on the rest of Earth's forces, the Eclipse made its move. The battle was intense. Laser beams lit up the sky as the Eclipse maneuvered through enemy fire, its cloaking device making it nearly impossible to detect. The ship's advanced AI systems guided them through tight spaces, evading enemy missiles and returning fire with pinpoint accuracy. It was a game of cat and mouse, and the Eclipse was playing it to perfection. But even as they struck critical blows against the flagship, the Empire's eye-controlled weapons were proving to be more dangerous than anticipated. These weapons, designed to target and destroy with ruthless efficiency, now turned their attention to the Eclipse. The ship was rocked by a series of massive explosions, shaking the crew to their core. "We can't keep this up," the tactical officer shouted, fear creeping into their voice. "The flagship's AI has adapted to our movements. It's only a matter of time before it destroys us." Captain Cole's mind raced. The situation was dire, but he refused to give up. This wasn't just about the Eclipse. This was about Earth, about humanity's future. They had fought too hard to let it all end now. "We're not done yet," Cole said, determination flooding his voice. "Prepare for a risky maneuver. We'll disable the flagship's energy core, or we'll die trying." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but they knew better than to question their captain. They had followed him through the worst of times, and they would continue to do so now. With a series of calculated moves, the Eclipse slipped through the enemy's defenses, heading straight for the flagship's energy core. As they got closer, the flagship's AI weapons went into overdrive, firing relentlessly at the Eclipse as it tried to close in. But Cole and his team were ready. They had one last trick up their sleeves. The Eclipse's engines flared to life, pushing the ship to its maximum speed as it hurtled toward the core. With a final, heart-stopping moment of tension, Captain Cole and his crew managed to disable the flagship's energy core. A massive explosion erupted from the heart of the enemy ship, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Empire's flagship, once the symbol of their power, was now nothing more than a burning wreck in space. The Empire's fleet, already reeling from the Eclipse's attack, began to fall apart. Without their flagship, the Empire's forces lacked the coordination and leadership they had once relied on. One by one, the remaining enemy ships were destroyed, until there was nothing left but debris and silence. The battle was over. Earth had won. But as Captain Cole stood at the bridge of the Eclipse, watching the destruction unfold, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. The victory had come at a great cost. The Eclipse had taken heavy damage, and the crew had lost so much. Lieutenant Sarah's death still weighed heavily on his heart. The faces of his fallen comrades lingered in his mind, and he knew that their sacrifices would never be forgotten. As the battle ended and the last remnants of the Empire's forces fled into the void of space, Earth's people began to rebuild. But the war was far from over. The Empire, though shattered, was not defeated. They would regroup, reorganize, and come back. This was just the beginning of a much larger conflict, and humanity would have to be ready. Captain Cole watched as Earth's rising sun lit up the dark expanse of space. The war was over, for now, but the scars of battle would remain. He had led his crew through the darkest days, and now, as Earth's first hero in a new age, he stood as a symbol of humanity's resilience. "We did it," he whispered to himself, as much to his fallen comrades as to the Earth below. "We survived." But even as victory seemed sweet, Cole knew that this was just the beginning. The Eclipse was battered, its crew exhausted, but their resolve was unbroken. Earth's place in the galaxy had been secured, but the battle against the Empire was far from over. They had proven their strength, their will to survive, but now they would have to continue fighting. The Eclipse's crew stood together, their unity a testament to the strength of humanity. As the ship prepared to leave the shattered remnants of the Empire's fleet behind, they knew that their journey was only beginning. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together, with the hope that they had earned their place among the stars. As Captain Cole looked out into the vastness of space, he couldn't help but feel both pride and fear. Humanity had taken its first steps into the galactic arena, and the challenges ahead were unimaginable. But they had proven one thing: when pushed to the brink, humanity would rise, and together they would face whatever came next.